We are doing lesson 5.3 from chapter 5 on rates. Again, one of the important lessons that we will be doing. A rate is nothing but a ratio of two different quantities which have different units. And we do this all the time in our lives. For example, pages read in hours, or the cost for pounds, or you can also say the goal scored in games. Goal scored in games. So these are the rates where you see that it is a ratio. I can set these up. For example, goal scored in games, let's say 10 goals in 5 games. So do you see that this is a ratio? 10 over 5 is a ratio. I'm comparing two quantities, and then they have different units, goals and games. Now, a unit rate is when we talk about it for one. So they will ask a question saying per or for every or for each, and that's how they are going to say it. So unit rate means for one. For example, gallons per mile, or you could have pages read per hour. So if you look, we have per hour, that means for 1 hour, per mile means for one. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in a minute. The other thing that we have to talk about is equivalent rates. When we are talking about equivalent rates, think equivalent fractions. Do the ratios or do the rates, are they equivalent? That's all we are looking at. For example, 1 pound of grapes costs, let's say $4. Then I should have 2 pounds for $8, and maybe I have 10 pounds. That would be $40. That would be $40. So if I set this up as a ratio, so $4 for 1 pound, dollars and pound, and then I have $8 for 2 pounds, and I have $40 for 10 pounds. Again, I have two different units, dollars and pounds, and I have, this is a unit rate because it is for 1 pound, so that's a unit rate. And then they are equivalent rates because if I reduce every one of these, I still get a 4 over 1 here and a 4 over 1. So they are equivalent rates. Now, let's see how to write a rate. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. One of the ways is to just say, give the different units. For example, in this case, I have the points 1 every time you hit a note in a video game. So there are a couple of different rates that I can write for this. I can say 150 points for 1 note, or I can say 600 points for 4 notes. I can also make other rates here. I can make 300 points for 2 notes, or I can say 750 points for 5 notes. So you could write anything. Alright, now let's go ahead and see how to find a unit rate. Remember, you have done this before. You all know how to find unit rates. Remember those problems where they had asked you 10 pencils cost $20. How much does each pencil cost? That's exactly what we are doing. One important thing you need to remember is unit rate means they are asking you for the price or of one, or the distance for 1 mile, or anything for 1 mile, asking for 1 unit. That's what they're asking for, 1 unit. Okay. let's go ahead and take a look. At mid latitudes, Earth spins at 3 miles in 10 seconds. How far does it spin per second? I'm just going to go ahead and box that. When they say per second, that means they want for 1 second. And one important thing to remember here is that whichever they say for 1, that is in your denominator. That number, the number that goes with that, is in the denominator. In this case, I have miles and seconds. They said 1 second, so my seconds is going to be in the denominator. Again, boys and girls, please set up your words. That makes it easier for you to see. So I have 3 miles for 10 seconds. So how far does it travel in per second? Divide it, which is 0.3 miles per second. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second one. The bullet train travels at 558 miles for 3 hours. They are asking for every hour. How far does it travel every hour? Again, I have the miles and the other unit is hours. So since they asked me for every hour, I know that that is what is in the denominator. I'm just going to set up my numbers now, which is really easy. And then go ahead and divide. 3 goes once, 3 goes 8 times, and 3 goes 6 times. So 186 miles per hour. Okay, let's move on. They're talking about, are the following equivalent rates? When they are asking you this, think, are they equivalent fractions? And you know there are a couple of ways to make or to decide and see if they are equivalent fractions. One is to make them the same denominators. That's how you will know. The other one is to see if one is a multiple of the other. The easiest one, I think, is to make them into the simplest form. So set them up. It doesn't matter how you set them up. I can go 18 to 15. That would be heartbeats to seconds. And then I'm going to reduce it. I know that the greatest common factor for them is 3. So 3 times 6 and 3 times 5. And the other one, I have 68 to 60. So I have a 68 to 60. And the greatest common factor here is 4. So 4 goes 17 times and 4 goes 15 times. This is the simplest form. Are they equivalent? Did we get the same simplest form? No, we did not. So this is not equivalent. Let's take a look at the other one. Oh, by the way, you could set this up in another way also. You could go ahead and instead of setting it up as 18 over 15, you could set it up as 15 over 18, which would have been seconds over heartbeat. But make sure that on the other side also you're setting it up as 60 over 68 when you reduce, just so you have to know which one corresponds to which one. We'll talk about it a little bit more in class. Let's look at the next one. I have kilometers here and I have minutes. I'm going to set up 35 kilometers for 25 minutes, and my other ratio is 14 kilometers in 10 minutes. Now let me go ahead and reduce. The greatest common factor is 5. So I'm going to divide both with 5. 5 gives me 7 over 5. And in the other case, the greatest common factor is 2. So I'm going to divide both with 2 and I get a 7/5. So did I get the same reduced rate? Yes. So these are equivalent rates. There are a couple different methods to do it. You can choose whichever you want. This is the easiest way to do it. Okay, now for the last piece of this. They're asking you that a chef buys 6 pounds of salmon fillets for 51. How much will he pay for 9 more pounds? I would go ahead and set it up as a unit rate first. So set it up as $51 for 6 pounds. So I'm going to do it for 1 pound. That means I have to divide by 6 and divide this also by 6. So that gives me 1 pound in the denominator, and 6 goes into 51. Does it go? No. So 6 times 8 is 48, and I have a $8.50. Now go ahead and multiply this with 9, because that's what they're asking me. So 9 times 5, 45. 9 times 8, 72. Gives me 76.5. So this is my final answer, $76.5 for 9 more pounds. Right, the last one. You buy 4 pounds for $22. What's the cost for 9 pounds of catfish? Again, $22. I'm setting it up for 4 pounds. I can figure out for 1 pound, so that means I'm dividing both with 4. Remember, I have to have 1 pound in the denominator, 1 pound. So 4 goes again, $5.50. Now I'm going to go ahead and figure out for 9 pounds. Multiply the 5.5 with 9, and that gives me 49.5. So that's $49.50 for 9 pounds of fillets. All right, go ahead and finish the rest of the problems that you have, and I will see you next class.